Hello, my name's Rob Edwards, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we're talking Doctor Who Series 12, Episode 6, Praxeus. And before I get into the episode itself, I just want to make a note that it is Episode 6 of a 10-episode series. That means we only have 4 more episodes left. And while I think it is right and proper to have a quieter, non-meta arc plot episode this week after a huge arc episode last week, it gives us a chance to take a breath and really kind of let the revelations of last week settle in a bit. It does feel that a filler episode here has to be good. It has to be something that stands on its own 2 feet, that has its own merits, that makes sense in this short season to spend time on it. What did I think of Praxeus? I think it actually manages it. But it does throw... I'm going to go on about this for the entire season, aren't I? But it does throw Orphan 55 into sharp relief. Something as bad as Orphan 55 should never have made it into a short season like this. So, Praxeus. I'm going to give you my general feelings about it. I'm going to tell you what worked for me and what didn't quite land. And, I'm going to start trying to be as spoiler-free as I possibly can. And my general spoiler-free take on this episode is that I enjoyed it. Pretty fun. I mean, it's not going to set the world on fire, but as I say, I wanted an episode after the big arc episode last week that was just this, really. It was just a familiar Doctor Who run around with a mystery and some danger and some adventure. And that's what we got, actually. And Praxeus, in that regards, did its job pretty well. I said last week that I was worried that we weren't going to get enough emphasis on the companions this season. And what we got this episode was a parallel mystery where the companions and the Doctor were split up, all investigating different aspects of it. And that meant we did get some time with the companions. We got to see Ryan interacting with this vlogger out in the wild, which was quite fun, given that Ryan himself, as we've established, is a YouTube star, much in the same vein as I am. And we got a really interesting pairing in Yaz and Graham. I'm trying to think that have we seen much of those two interacting together? And I'm not sure that we have, really. And that's quite nice. It's something different to see about them. But it didn't mean we sidelined the Doctor in this episode. She was still strong. She was still good. I am still loving Jodie in this role this season. Certainly more than I did last season. So, on the whole, yeah, if you want my non-spoiler take on this episode, it pretty much did what I wanted it to. Gave me a breather after last week and put some focus back on the companions. But there are things which didn't work for me as well. How do I feel about the big environmental message of this episode? I think we kind of just need to come to terms with that's going to be an element of the Chibnall era. Which is not to say, I'm not one of these people who say, Doctor Who's never been political in the past before, it shouldn't be political now. Doctor Who's always been political. There's always been politics and new ideas. And look back at Pertwee's era and all the sort of anti-government stuff in there, all of the sort of questioning science, and there were environmental messages like in The Green Death, going back even as far as that and beyond. So, no, politics and environmentalism and all of this stuff has always been part of Doctor Who. And, I guess probably it's always been a little bit on the nose. The episode this week was just a little bit too much. But then I guess if we're being subtle about it and it's still happening, maybe we do need to be a bit more forceful about these messages. So I don't know. I can't put that into a plus or a minus column. Just into this is what Doctor Who currently is in the Chibnall era. And, if you don't like that, that's your prerogative, I guess. If you do love that, then, that's also good for you. For me, it's just a thing. I think I need to talk spoilers to talk about the rest of the episode, so let's move into that arena. I don't mind this sort of social commentary aspect of Doctor Who in the Chibnall era, but one thing which does bug me a little bit in the Chibnall era is I do find myself asking why a lot more than I did in Moffat or Davies' Who. I mean, not that I'd never asked why on earth is that character doing that, or why was that decision made in those eras, but it does seem to be endemic to Chibnall's writing, or the era of Chibnall's writing. And there were a few situations in this episode where I just kind of found myself going, okay, if you're going to introduce something like that, have the characters react to it in a sensible way. The two vloggers stumble upon the most beautiful river in the world, but it turns out to have turned, in the last year, to have become this sort of dumping ground of old plastic. And, okay, fine, that's on message, that's part of what this episode is about. That makes sense. And one of the two girls says, we're definitely not camping here tonight, and that also makes sense. And then we decide to camp there that night, and I don't understand why they would. Forget weird alien diseases, I would not pitch a tent in what is clearly a rubbish site. If I had a choice otherwise, and clearly the fact they've stumbled upon this dumping site as a surprise means that the area they just left from wasn't a dumping site, so, why not backtrack 10-15 minutes and pitch a tent there instead? It doesn't make sense to me. When Ryan and the vlogger, I've forgotten her name, you can tell, go, Jamila, possibly? When they go and try and find what happened to her friend, they go to a hospital which is deserted. Why is the hospital deserted? I mean, apart from the fact it meant they didn't have to pay for extras in a hospital environment. Why? Why was it deserted? Why? I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me. If there were... Yeah. Why, speaking of whys, why was the Doctor's infection control protocol so bad? This alien pathogen disease thing explodes in their faces, and, it doesn't even seem to occur to the Doctor that might be an infection vector for this weird alien disease. So, it's... And Ryan's picking up dead birds that we know are infected in some way with something weird. I know he used a blanket, but he was carrying it in his backpack for hours afterwards, it seemed. Why? Sorry, I went off on a bit one there. But it is something which I've noticed a lot in the writing of Doctor Who recently, that I do find myself asking really sort of simple kind of logic-based questions that just don't seem to quite work. And, all shows have them. My wife and I watch a lot of CW sort of superhero action-y type stuff as well, and she's forever pointing out the places where people do weird things in the Flash. For some reason, I'm more willing to let it go in a show like that. But in Doctor Who, it bugs me. In a show which is, more about being sort of proper science fiction rather than superhero stuff, and, it's about having a message. Why? And another one, just with Yaz and her strange reaction to danger this season. We had that really nice moment in Spyfall Part 1 where she kind of gets abducted by the Kasavin. I'm going to get that name right eventually by the end of the season. And she comes back from it really kind of shook. She was, not sure she was going to get out of it. She was not, taking it lightly. And yet, even in that same episode, and certainly through the rest of the series, Yaz seems to be throwing herself into danger after danger after danger. Does this mean we're setting up some sort of plot line where Yaz actually is killed off? I mean, maybe. It doesn't seem super likely for Doctor Who, but possibly. But it does seem really inconsistent that, this woman who was in Part 1 really kind of taken aback by being stranded away from help and the Doctor, decides in this episode that she's just going to hit the teleport button and find out where it goes. It doesn't make sense to me. And poor old, is it Amru? The guy working with the evil alien Doctor, who just sort of wanders off onto the beach and gets killed by the infected birds. Weird. Sorry, I've gone on to a rant there. I didn't mean to, because this isn't an episode I disliked. Actually, despite all those little whys, I really like this episode. But the fact that they're there still bugs me. Okay, let's talk about things I did like. Graham, we had a Graham moment. The signal comes from right behind that wall. Behind that door. Brilliant, loved it, very funny. Just an obvious joke, but very, very funny and well played. I liked the guest casts, actually, generally. They were all really likeable characters. And the fact that we opened on them and their activities gave us a chance to connect with those characters before throwing the TARDIS crew into it. A bit like the Tesla episode. We got to live in the world of our guest characters before crashing the Doctor into the scene. And that gives us a chance to understand and appreciate those characters and their problems before the weirdness really sets in. And I like that. That's a positive thing. And it's a positive aspect of having longer episodes in the Chibnall era. And putting the emphasis this time in the right place to build the world, to build the story, to get us some emphasis. And yeah, I really like that. And I really liked the mystery that we had on show here. I liked the idea that these aliens had viewed Earth essentially as a chance to experiment with this disease to find a cure for themselves by infecting us with it. I mean, I don't like the fact that they would do it, but I like that as an idea. It is a strong idea. I quite enjoyed the fact, actually, that the alien scientists had really terrible aim with their blaster rifles. And the fact that Jake, the hard-bitten detective, once he got hold of them, was able to take them down relatively easily because he was a better shot with a gun than these scientists were. And that was kind of the thing that I wanted to say, that it's clear that it was intended that the guys in the gas masks were not sort of alien bully boys. They were scientists. They had weapons, but it didn't necessarily mean they were really very good with them. They weren't Imperial Stormtroopers, because only Imperial Stormtroopers are this accurate. The final point in my plus column for this episode is the one which really tips it over from an episode of Doctor Who that happened to an episode of Doctor Who that I enjoyed. And that is that throughout the episode they were able to maintain an ongoing sense of threat. That there was a problem to be solved, there was a mystery there, but there was always a sense of danger literally hanging over their heads. Because it was the birds, Alfred Hitchcock would be proud, but it was the birds and their presence and doing strange things and always there, always watching, always about to strike, that meant we continued through the episode with a sense of danger. And that's only a good thing in an episode of Doctor Who. It was also, by the way, helped by the soundtrack this episode. I've not really talked about the soundtrack very much in Doctor Who. It's not something which really I think about very much. I do miss the sort of bombast of Murray Gold. But this episode's soundtrack was really effective for me. The sort of percussive sort of beats going through, always in the background, always kind of giving you a sense of unease. I thought it was really effective. So that, I think, is what pushes it over for me, from just being an episode of Doctor Who that happened to one that I genuinely came away enjoying, despite my catalogue of whys. Yes, Praxeus, it worked for me. I enjoyed it. So there we go, that was my take on this episode, and we only have 4 more episodes to come this season. And generally speaking, this season has been steps ahead of season 11. I have been really loving most of what's happened this season, with one notable exception that I shall not name again in this review, but I can guarantee it's going to come up again in a future review. So yeah, I actually came out of Praxeus feeling pretty good about it. So there we go. That is my review of this episode of Doctor Who. Join me next week when I am sure I will be talking yet more about strange oddities and asking some more whys, I expect. Want to check out more about Doctor Who from me? Check out the box over here. And if you want to see about more of me as a writer, check the box over there. And somewhere on the screen, I will eventually work out where there is a subscribe button. Thanks for watching.